You're watching NHK Newsline. I'm Keiko Kitagawa in Tokyo. Chinese state-run media are reporting that North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un is visiting China for 2 days. Kim is expected to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping to fill him in on all the details from last week's U.S.-North Korea summit. A North Korean transport plane landed in Beijing on Tuesday morning and unloaded Kim's private limousine. Kim's plane landed next. His motorcade took off, led by Chinese police. It headed to a guest house in central Beijing. This marks Kim's third visit to China to meet with Xi. The two previously met in March and May. Let's bring in Aiko Doden from our Aeon Asia desk for more. Aiko, this visit comes 1 week after Kim met U.S. President Donald Trump in Singapore. What do you make of the timing?
Right. Keiko, China is, of course, the North's key ally. And this visit could be meant to demonstrate just how close those two countries are. And Kim could be trying to gain leverage in his negotiations with the U.S. And alongside the summit, another topic that will likely come up is joint military exercises between the U.S. and South Korea. Seoul and Washington say they've agreed to halt a key one that was set to take place this summer. Trump had promised to put an end to what he described as war games with the South after last week's summit. The exercise is called Ulchi Freedom Guardian and was scheduled for August. Tens of thousands of troops from both countries practice using computerized military simulations in an effort to enhance readiness on the Korean peninsula. The exercise has been conducted annually for decades. Last week, Donald Trump surprised many with his announcement to suspend joint drills, which he said were expensive and provocative. The White House says it's following through on that promise.
As long as the North Koreans continue to act in good faith, as we saw in Singapore, then we expect those things to be on pause at this point.
Pyongyang has long railed against the joint drills. The Pentagon says there have not been any decisions yet on other exercises. The suspension is certainly causing a stir across the South. Let's head over there now to hear from NHK World's Kim Chanju in Seoul. Chanju, what kind of reactions are you hearing?
Well, there are mixed opinions here. Some people are welcoming the news, so they think it could be a step forward to peace on the Korean peninsula. One South Korean expert told me it's symbolic and could lower tensions here. President Moon Jae-in stressed the importance of transforming what has been a hostile inter-Korean relationship into a friendlier one. Moon enjoys a high support rate from South Koreans. The government says the decision was made to maintain the momentum of talks, but it's also trying to reassure people that they will be safe.
한미연합방위에서는 조금의 차질도 없이
South Korea and the U.S. forces continue to be ready to defend themselves. We hope the decision to suspend the drill will draw a favorable reaction from the North.
But there are some who don't believe the government's reassurances. Many are afraid the defense capabilities of the South Korea-U.S. alliance could be weakened. And some are even worried that the latest suspension could eventually lead to the withdrawal of U.S. forces altogether. One expert says the suspension may be too early because since the summit, the North hasn't made any steps to denuclearize the country.
And Chanju, let's go back to Kim Jong-un's visit to China. He's been very active lately in building foreign relations. Now, what do you think is behind his multiple trips to China in recent months?
Well, adding to what you've mentioned, I want to point out that North Korea has apparently restored its relationship with China. It had soured over recent years, especially with Pyongyang's continued nuclear and missile tests. During the Singapore summit, both leaders discussed denuclearization and security guarantees for the North. And that matters a lot to Beijing because China and North Korea sit side by side. One expert told me Kim seems to be trying to strike a balance between the U.S. and China. He says Kim wants Beijing to back his regime, and he thinks Pyongyang can extract a more cooperative stance from China by getting closer to the U.S. Building on what came out of Singapore, Kim and Xi will likely discuss the status of the Korean War armistice, as well as further economic cooperation between their countries, even in light of tight UN sanctions on the North.
Thank you, Chanju. The U.S. Secretary of State says he will likely head back to North Korea soon to continue negotiations about Pyongyang's denuclearization. Mike Pompeo has met North Korea's leader 3 times this year, most recently at last week's Singapore summit. He says there is a lot of work ahead with Kim Jong-un.
He has made very clear his commitment to fully denuclearize his country. That's everything, right? It's not just the weapon systems, it's everything. In return for that, the President has committed to making sure that we alter the armistice agreement, provide the security assurances that Chairman Kim needs.
Hostilities in the Korean War ended with an armistice in 1953, but no peace treaty was ever signed. Kim committed to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula in a joint statement after last week's summit. But the document doesn't lay out verification methods, and there is no timeline. North Korea is reportedly planning to resume a large-scale spectacle known as the Mass Games for the first time in 5 years. It's believed Pyongyang is trying to boost tourism and currency from overseas. A Beijing-based travel agency that organizes tours says about 100,000 performers will take part. The Mass Games coincide with celebrations to mark the North's 70th anniversary. Past events have involved flashy performances of song and dance, all aimed at boosting national prestige and demonstrating loyalty to the North's leader. Earlier this year, the Workers' Party said it was going to focus on rebuilding the North's economy. That's it for today's Eye on Asia.